Welcome to Wales Tech Week 2021. Thank you to our partners. Enjoy the session.
Welcome. My name is Priya Guha, and I'm a venture partner at Merian Ventures. Delighted you can join us for the session we're about to start now, which is around female entrepreneurs. Are they born or made? The purpose of this discussion is really to dig into the inspiration behind the inventions and solutions created by women in the tech industry by asking them really, when was your light bulb moment? And how did the idea you have become a reality? In order to stimulate this conversation, I'm delighted to be joined by two fantastic female tech founders from Wales, Kate Bache, who is the CEO and founder of Health and Her, and also Sarah Bolt, who is the CEO and founder of Forth. Welcome to Kate and welcome to Sarah.
Thanks, Priya.
Thanks, Priya.
Fantastic. So in order to explore this conversation of female entrepreneurs, are they born or made? I wonder, maybe Sarah, tell us a little bit about your own personal story and how you ended up founding Forth.
Sure. Well, my background was mostly spent in consumer marketing, and I worked for quite big global brands such as Jack Daniels and Dyson. But it was while I was working at Dyson, and I had one of those kind of birthdays which always kind of, I don't know, in my life, they always seem to generate a big change in life. So I hit 40 and I had two young boys at the time, and I was commuting 3 hours a day. And I just took a look at my life and just thought, you know, life, there's got to be something better than this, what I was doing. And if I was going to work all these hours, and I am really motivated by working and my career, that should I do something which had a bit more meaningful, was a bit more meaningful for society and had more of a social impact on society. So I resigned from my job as I was working as a new product development manager, and I actually signed up to do a master's degree at the University of the West of England in behaviour change marketing. So I really wanted to work within healthcare. That was where I decided I wanted to work. So I went and did the master's degree, started working for the NHS, and then eventually became a strategy planner of a private healthcare agency, where I was working with a lot of private healthcare companies, looking at their strategy planning and looking at their product development and where the gaps were in the market. And it was whilst I was doing that, and this is around about 2013, 2014, that I started doing work in the area of digital marketing or digital health. And you have to understand, around 2013, 2014, it was a really new area at that time. And that the phrase digital health had only just been coined around that time. So I started doing some work with GPs who had an idea about starting virtual consultations, because there was nothing like virtual consultations at that time. And at the same time, Fitbit was launched, and I love data and I love technology. And I just thought, wow, God, that's great to be able to give people that amount of data. And through the work that I'd been doing in healthcare, you could see that globally, we were going through this transition, and this transition was a change from sickness care to kind of well-being and prevention, and also patients. There was a power shift going on. You know, people didn't want to be patients; they actually wanted to be consumers of health, and they wanted to be treated more like clients. And so that was the start of, I guess, that light bulb moment, that actually people wanted more. They wanted more empowerment. They wanted more information about their health. And I felt that I was in the position to set up a business that gave them that. And that was the start of it all.
And before I ask you, Kate, the same question, maybe, Sarah, you could just give us a flavour about what Forth is. What does Forth do?
Yeah, so Fourth is a biomarker tracking company. So we essentially let people give people easy access into what's happening in their body and the inside through collecting small biological samples at home, which they can then send to a lab. And then we have a data dashboard where people can see their markers, gain an understanding of what that means, and also what action they can take to improve. And then they can chart their improvement over time. It's been really interesting in this last year, really, because when we first started, and I was looking for investment, back in 2016, people used to look at me as if I was mad, as think like, why would people want this information? Now with COVID as well, it's totally changed the landscape. And I would say that, it's certainly advanced the sector I'm in, by 5 years plus, because you'll be hard pushed to find anywhere, not only in the UK, but in the world now, who doesn't understand that you can collect a biological sample at home and send it off to a lab for analysis. So COVID has really accelerated, I think, the uptake of this market sector, and the desire by people to want more information about their health and be in greater control.
Absolutely. Kate, tell us about your own story.
Yeah, some similarities definitely to Sarah in terms of my career. So in a similar way, work for large organizations in marketing and innovation. I think my journey was a kind of series of stepping stones, I suppose. I used to work for a company called Reckitt's for about 6 or 7 years. I went on the grad scheme there, and they're a classic company to throw you straight into the deep end. So I was managing Clearasil actually as a brand at that point, very early on, probably only in the first year of working for that organization. And they have a motto which is around, if you're a marketing brand manager, you are the CEO of that brand. And I just remember working with a broad number of people, setting the strategy for that product and for that product range, and thinking, wow, if I can do this, such early stage in my career, I feel like I could run my own business now, just from that experience. So that's probably where it started, definitely planted the seed. From there, I went and worked all around the world. I had a fantastic opportunity, which I think was driven a lot by kind of social, again, this kind of social impact, social purpose that I was kind of looking for, really, rather than kind of selling boxes of things. I was kind of always looking for something a bit more than that. Had a great opportunity to work with Save the Children in India in their marketing team as a volunteer, which was a fantastic experience. Found myself back in big consumer good companies. So I worked for Kellogg's and PepsiCo after that. And I think it was really, I suppose, a big life event for me. I lost a very close family member, and I just kind of felt really that life was too short, and I wanted to get back that nice combination of business, things that I felt I was good at, so kind of marketing and business, but something with a greater kind of altruistic purpose behind it. And from that point, back in 2015, I started my first business, which was a brand called Kind Organic, which was the first mainstream organic femcare product range, so a range of kind of sanitary products for women, and launched that into Boots and Ocado, and was very lucky to get a very early exit on that brand and that business. I think it was a great business, but lots of competition and probably not too many barriers to entry. So it was during that time of really understanding female health that I then started Health and Her, and saw what I thought was a bigger opportunity actually around kind of digital health and femtech, around helping women going through menopause, which is a very large white space. So yeah, not one light bulb moment for me, a series of stepping stones to get there, and really driven by just a desire, I suppose, to start a business that has impact.
And it's so interesting hearing both of you talk, because there's something that runs through both of your answers around that purpose. So that you felt that sort of something was missing in your previous corporate life, and you wanted to add that in terms of your choices as you became an entrepreneur. Maybe Kate, just dig down on that a little bit, because that's a theme that ran through so much of what you talked about there. What was it that drove you in terms of finding a purpose for the business you wanted to found?
I think when you work hard at anything, it's definitely feeling like you're achieving something and having fulfillment is so critical, really, to getting up every day and putting your heart into it. And I think, as I said, I think I acknowledged that very early on in my career, and that's why I looked for, a complete switch actually into the charity sector. And what was quite interesting about working in such a large organisation like Save the Children was it did feel great and I did enjoy my time, but I felt like I actually felt I had potentially more power in the kind of commercial business side of things to make change than I did as a probably quite a small cog in a very large organisation on the charity side of things. So I think I was then really looking hard to try and combine the two, I think, and having the opportunity to have like a kind of a business with a social purpose. I think what's really exciting for us now as an organisation is it really motivates the team as well. So we find it a very good motivator for recruitment. People really want to work for us, know that they're making a good difference to people's lives, and also retention as well. So we hear from women on a daily basis that we're changing their lives, and if nothing else, that is definitely a good thing to get up for in the morning.
Oh, that sounds fantastically inspiring. And Sarah, how about for you, that moment of sort of feeling like something was missing in your previous corporate life? What was it around purpose that drove you to do what you're doing now?
I guess I think for me, it just came with kind of growth in life, I guess, maturity in life, and also I think probably having children. I started off in my career in more commercial kind of traditional corporate led businesses, and I think that children is one of those events that that you have to put someone else before yourself. And I wanted them, it sounds really corny, but I wanted them to be proud of me. So it was just looking at something that I felt was really worthwhile my time and my investment of my time away from my children as well, to do something which had more purpose, and also something that kind of set an example for them, actually. I mean, it sounds really cliched, but it was as basic as that. And it is, as Kate was saying, having a business with purpose is become a very talked about thing now. But a few years ago, when we both started our businesses, it wasn't so talked about. But now, when you're talking to, we're recruiting more people now all the time. You're recruiting people in their 20s, and that is something which really attracts them. And actually, as a small business, you can attract people away from big businesses because of that. Because younger people, they seem to want to, a lot of younger people, they want to work with businesses which have more social impact and more purpose.
So first of all, I'm sure if your boys were here today, they would say absolutely they're 100% proud of what you've achieved. So I wish they were here to say that personally, but I hope they say it enough to you outside of this session.
Thank you.
Before I ask my next question, I did want to just say to anyone who's dialing in, please do dive in with questions. You'll see the comments box next to the screen that you're watching, and it would be great to have any questions or perspectives from you who are listening in. So Sarah, I wanted to come back to that sort of start of the entrepreneurship journey. So, you've got this fantastic background in marketing in particular in your case, and how did you feel that you had the skills just to suddenly think about entrepreneurship?
I guess throughout my life, I've always been kind of a very kind of motivated person who just believes anything is possible. And I think when you start a business, you have to have that kind of mindset that anything is possible. And then it was just about putting the pieces together, acknowledging that you probably won't be able to do everything. So what are the skills that you need? I think I recognized very early on as well that I didn't want to start a business solely on my own. I'd started a business bit like Kate, I'd started a business a long time ago, actually, when I turned 30. And this is the thing about turning decades. It seems to be a thing in my life. But I had a business when I was 30 as well. And I did that on my own. And I actually discovered it. I found it a really lonely place. So this time around, I thought, well, no, I don't want to do it on my own. Okay, it's my vision. But actually, I want to bring someone on board to share the ups and downs with the journey with me, who was as we equally invested as me within the business, and also that person needed to bring more technical skills into it, because for us my vision wasn't to create an e-commerce business. It was very much to create a health tech platform. So I had worked with someone for a number of years who was a developer, a software engineer in a company, and actually I approached him, and actually he became a co-founder in the business. And then it was just a case of building our other blocks of what we needed in terms of expertise, and one of those things were really around medical. The clinical expertise into the business, finding a chief medical officer, and some things what I didn't know, I just learned. It was as simple as that, because we couldn't afford all the expertise that we needed, so we just had to learn how to do it ourselves.
Well, I'm slightly interested to hear what you're going to do on your next big birthday, Sarah, because clearly it's a moment in your life when dramatic changes happen. So we'll all be watching out for that one. We'll have to redo the panel when you've decided what you're going to do. But I wanted to come to you, Kate, with a similar question, which is just around, when you took that decision, what was going on in your mind? What were the things that you thought, yes, I can do this? And then what were the other things that you're thinking, oh my God, how do I learn how to do the rest of it? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I was very lucky at that time, just before I kind of leaped out of corporate life, I was working in innovation. So my job was essentially to create new breakfast cereals for Kellogg's, and both here in Europe, but also in Australia, which is great. Loved the job. It was I love the kind of creative element, and seeing something that you've created from scratch on shelf in store it's a really good feeling. So essentially, yeah, I was quite well practiced at doing that. Understood what it took to get a product to market, and so I felt kind of quite well positioned to do that on my own, albeit quite difficult to do without funding and everything else that comes with that. So yeah, and really, I think from a perspective of what came next, as I said, I kind of, it wasn't a birthday, but I had unfortunately I lost my mum, and it really was a time at which I just felt like anything was possible, really, and life's too short. That was really a critical factor for me. And I'd had really nothing to lose, apart from maybe a bit of money. So the first business that I went into, it was all my own investment. So kind of my life savings at that point. But really, yeah, it just felt like a really good opportunity, and backed myself. And I think one of the things I often did was I kind of just looked at other people that were doing it, and kind of, I knew some people that were also being entrepreneurs, and felt that, I could do something similar. I was probably inspired by some other kind of female entrepreneurs at the time. And I think the one thing that really, as kind of Sarah touched on, really, is that you need to know is that you can't do everything, and you definitely need to bring in the right people. In a similar way, I was on my own in my first startup, and felt pressure significantly, although I had a great business coach to help me through some of that. It's not quite the same as having another founder to share it properly. So yeah, on my second venture on Health and Her, I got a co-founder involved who is absolutely fantastic, and we regularly have conversations where we're having a really bad time, and we can share that burden. And I think that's really important. I actually decided to do that after reading about, I know there's some big kind of VCs in the US that really encourage two founders. And I think I read the story about the founder of Dropbox and how he had 2 weeks to find another founder. And obviously that business has just gone from strength to strength. So yeah, I think that was my inspiration as well for the second founder, I think. And we similarly had a big gap in our kind of knowledge. around tech. We are now hiring technical people, but we've managed to get to where we are with some significant growth by utilising kind of freelancers and people externally to that. But yeah, I think it's really important that you know your strengths and weaknesses. I think that and you're not too afraid to ask for lots of help, I think, is the key.
Sorry, that's an old technical hitch after years of being on video conferencing, or it feels like years at least. Going back to you, Sarah, I wanted to come back to one of the themes that I think comes out a little bit in Kate's answer there, which is the importance of seeing people who are doing it. Was that an influence when you were looking to make the switch to start a business? Were there people in your immediate peer group or just people that you saw around you who were giving you a little bit of inspiration to make the leap?
No, there wasn't. I didn't know anyone who'd started their own business, actually. So I jumped in, but actually then soon after, about 6 months in, we became part of an accelerator group. So we became part of Set Squared. And actually, that was actually a pivotal moment, because it put you day to day. You then met other founders who were going through the same problems with you, and also there's also the learnings, kind of having the mentors within the accelerator group and someone to actually just talk you through how you actually go about getting investment. As with Kate as well, we're both B2C businesses. So B2C businesses, you're going to need some cash to make those really work for you. So, I came to it really not understanding the investment market at all, or not knowing wealthy people who would invest in the company. So it was really a blank sheet that I had to learn from scratch, and certainly being part of an accelerator group and be able to talk and link up with other founders who are doing it. And we're on the same part of the journey as you, because, startups, they all go through different stages, and having someone who was in that same part of the journey with you, I think was really important. Otherwise, I think you'd go quite crazy. I think it's really important to have that outlet to speak to others who are going through the same things as you are.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I think that peer group support gives you the strength you need to get over the tough times, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Please do, just a reminder to fire in any questions if you've got them. And thank you, Elizabeth, for your comment. It's great to know that you're enjoying hearing about Sarah and Kate's stories. So I wanted to pick up the question of fundraising. And I think there is particular challenge for female founded businesses raising capital. We know that from the Rose Review, when we know that only 1 pence in every pound in the UK goes to female funded businesses. So as a female entrepreneur, how did you both think about the plan for raising the investment you needed to scale? Maybe Sarah, you sort of started to talk about that in your answer just now. So why don't you elaborate on that part of your journey?
Yeah, so 2016, we had our first live product, and we're trying to find initial capital, initial angel investment, seed investment to really launch it to market. And I felt it was really tough. And I think it was a mixture of myself not knowing how the system worked and who these people were. That was one thing. The other thing was that we were launching into a sector which fundamentally didn't exist back in 2016. And so we were queried very much was like, well, how do you know this sector actually is going to be a growth industry? And I was like, well, because I've worked in healthcare for a decade as a strategy planner, that's how I know. So that was really tough. I think, obviously, female founders, they do get a rough ride, but I've really tried to, I guess, as a mindset of a female founder, you can't hold that up as a barrier. For me, whenever I got turned down and it was invariably a kind of middle-aged male investor, I just thought, well, I have to work harder. that's kind of how I took it on board and try and knock those barriers. So we ended up actually going out to the crowd and thought, if angel investors don't believe in us and don't want to invest in us, we'll actually go to the crowd and let them decide, because they're the ones who are ultimately going to be buying our product, because our product is aimed at a much younger audience. And I think that in the angel investor market just didn't understand our audience either. They belong to a kind of different era. So we actually raised our first seed investment through Crowdcube, and that kind of got us off and running.
How about yourself, Kate? You also talked in your answer before about the importance of investment and how you approach that. Tell us a little bit more about the investment journey for Health and Her.
Yeah, sure. So we started off in 2018 for our first round, a seed round. And I think the interesting, Sarah's just mentioned about her investor not being her consumer. We had a similar dilemma where actually kind of slightly older gentlemen were tended to be the angel investors that were available to us. But luckily, a lot of them had kind of secondhand experience of menopause through their partners. So interestingly, we did speak to some younger female investors, and they simply didn't get it, which is actually reflective of how little is known about menopause amongst women, and not in menopause actually. So yeah, I think once we'd kind of worked out this strategy of who's the right investor, how are they going to get interested in this, I think it made our journey a lot easier. And I think I would definitely encourage anyone to think about that quite critically early on. I think the other issue that we had is menopause is not the most sexy subject, and obviously you're kind of up against lots of quite interesting startups in interesting spaces. So I think that's always a challenge as well. But as I keep reminding a lot of potential investors, I think it's those slightly neglected, unsexy areas that have so much more potential and less competition actually. So so I mean, we had some seed funding early on. We and then went on to a second round quite quickly. I think we always struggle with valuation, partly because we'd already got revenue and traction. And I think sometimes tech businesses in particular do well early on before pre-revenue, because I think you can kind of sell the idea. But having worked in big industry, we didn't feel that comfortable doing it that way around. We wanted to generate traction and we wanted to generate revenue quite early on. And similarly now, we're keen to drive into a profitable position and not have to rely on funding kind of going forward. So we've just completed a round in December. That was hopefully our last round. We're fingers crossed, and we're really pursuing that kind of profitable point, which hopefully will come in the next year or so. But I think the other thing that really I had to get my head around is that you I hate the phrase, but you have to kiss a lot of frogs. I think you have to have a lot of discussions with a lot of people to really understand who's interested. I mean, I would say last year it took us about 9 months to raise the money. I think particularly hamstrung by COVID, but I easily did over 100 pitches. A couple of pitches the same people, but definitely over 100. And I think when you tell kind of new entrepreneurs that, it can be quite daunting. But I think it's important to know that you really have to work hard at it, and there are the right people out there for you. You just it's a numbers game. It really is. And
I think that goes back to your point about bringing on a co-founder, actually, because what I've seen work well, and it sounds like you did something similar, Kate, is that sort of you devote your time to the fundraising whilst the other co-founder can focus on the current running of the business, and you can sort of divide and conquer, so to speak. I wanted to switch tack slightly and maybe come back to something you talked about in terms of, your big birthday moment, as we're going to call it now, Sarah. When you did the switch to entrepreneurship, you also said that one of the things that drove that decision was having young kids. And you wanted to get that 3-hour commute out of your day and get a bit more ownership of your time. So let's go on to the controversial topic of work-life balance as an entrepreneur. Sarah, how was it for you?
I'd say I still struggle with work-life balance. The first 5-10 years of a business, you need to put a lot of hours in. I do joke. my children are a little bit older now, and as they've got into teenage years, they don't actually want to speak to you very much, which is just as well. So because I I joke around that I kind of virtually didn't speak to my children for 2 years, because you're dedicated so much time to the business. But it's different now because I'm doing something that I feel really passionate about. And it just changes, your mindset, that it's almost a joy. It sounds terrible, but it's almost a joy to work. I actually really look forward, and actually the weekends I'm like, oh, I shouldn't really work, it's because it's a bit like a performance athlete, isn't it? You've got to have your recovery time. So try and not to work on the weekends. But, I do, my laptop does call out to me during the weekends, and I have to really try and stop myself from doing that. And I think that when you're really passionate about something as well, you can be more innovative and more creative about products that you come up with. And we because I'm kind of passionate about female health and trying to help eradicate the inequalities in gender health and do more for women. We were able last year. I was able to direct the company towards developing a new artificial intelligence product for female hormones. And so it's great to be in control of your own destiny, but be able to develop products that are really needed out there by women, and can do something for good, really.
Same question to you, Kate. I know you have a much younger baby to take care of alongside running your business. So how is that work-life balance piece for you?
Yeah, I think, silver lining of the COVID situation, being able to work from home, less commutes, I think that's certainly helped. And yeah, having a little bit extra time with my son. But yeah, I became pregnant during the kind of first year of our business, being live in the market, and had to raise money whilst being pregnant as well, which was quite an interesting experience. But actually, I think probably becoming a mum and having to multitask and really be very efficient with your time. I've actually been told by many of my investors my performance has probably improved, which is quite interesting. And I think there is that interesting dynamic of, I suppose, sometimes less is more. I think sometimes the more time you do spend in the business, you might be doing things that have less impact. So I think it certainly challenges you to prioritize your tasks. And yeah, I think it's the challenge of, I think we're both running kind of female health businesses, but also trying to manage our own female health and our own kind of family and time. It is definitely challenging, but I do think as women we do have a superpower of multitasking. And I think looking back, I remember how afraid I was about having a baby and running a business concurrently. And I think now I know it's absolutely achievable, and if anything, makes you a better leader, and more efficient at what you do in your job and in life probably as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a fantastic image that you were conjuring in my mind there about sort of you running around with a sort of superpower cape on, managing to do everything fantastically, Kate, which I think is absolutely spot on. But maybe just to sort of use the last few minutes of the chat, just to step back 1 second with a few reflections. I'd love to hear, because whilst I think you're both incredibly positive about what you've been able to achieve as entrepreneurs, there must have been the lows as well as the highs on the journey. So maybe just to get a sense of, the worst moment, but also the best moment that you've had so far as an entrepreneur. Maybe Sarah, I can ask you that question first of all.
I think one of the things that I've noticed, and I've talked to Chris, my kind of co-founder, about, is I think that one of the dangers when you've got a startup business as well, is that you don't celebrate enough your success, because you get past a gatepost and then you've got another one. You set what the next gatepost is. So you just almost have a sigh of relief that you've passed that gatepost, and then you're focused on the next one. So I think definitely going forward, I'd like, us, as a business, to celebrate our successes more, and maybe give time for those successes rather than rushing on to the next thing that our next area of focus. I think our greatest success, I think probably just the moment that we actually went live with our platform, really, because we created it from nothing. We had nothing. We just invested our own savings, and we got something to market which was new, innovative. And it was almost like, we've done that, we've done that, just you and me. We've got that to market on an absolute shoestring, just using our savings and begging and borrowing where we could. So I always think that probably will be still always our greatest success, is turning that idea into that moment of reality where you've got your product and it's live. Our hardest moment, I know exactly when it was, June last year, the entire month of June. So we obviously, we're in a healthcare company, and we do testing, and that has been a very big area of focus in the last 12 months since COVID. And last May, us, amongst many other companies in the market, launched a COVID antibody test to the market, which labs had done all the validation work for. And on a bank holiday weekend at the end of May, the MHRA changed guidelines overnight, and it was really tough. People were really angry. They thought we'd missold them something, which we hadn't. We'd sold them something which was totally within guidelines at the time, but then all guidelines had changed. So June was a really hard month for us. We literally had everyone in the business turned into a customer service representative, and just trying to explain to people the situation, giving refunds to people, and just managing that. And, we lost 3 points off our Trustpilot rating virtually overnight. And anyone who has Trustpilot knows that it's really hard to gain points in Trustpilot. And we've just got back to it now. But it was a really tough time for us as a business.
And how did you come out of that? Because that must have been a really, really difficult few months, as you describe it. What did you take away from that as the CEO, as the leader? How did you use it as a positive, maybe in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, it was really one of these one-off, unexpected situations. None of us knew what 2020 was going to be like. So I don't think we could have planned for it. But it's I guess as a company, things will always go wrong. It's all about how you then deal with it. And literally, it was just head down, do the right thing, give people their money back, say sorry. We know it's not our fault, but people are afraid, they're angry, and we're just going to have to soak some of that up as a company and put our heads down and get through it. And I'd say we came out of it a lot stronger, as a team. And as a business. And I would say that, literally in June, I came out of it thinking that is the worst month I've had in my entire working career, but we all got through it. And so if we got through that, we know it just builds it builds our resilience. And I think that one thing that I've learned as a founder is resilience will be your greatest asset.
That's such a true point. Thank you for sharing that with us, Sarah. Kate, same question to you, really, in terms of, you know, the best moment for you as a founder, and also like the toughest one that you had to get through.
I think interestingly, but they always come together for me. So in fact, there's two examples in my last business. So the first one is I thought I'd agreed a contract with Boots. So the first organic femcare products in Boots or any sort of mainstream grocer. And I got the dreaded call that they put their plans back 6 months. And I'd been working my socks off for this moment for you know, almost 18 months or so. So just had that horrible sinking feeling. And I remember very distinctly calling up my kind of business coach, an amazing lady called Julie Booth. And we just talked it through. And it's actually that very moment that the concept of Health and Her came to us. Really excited about, obviously the outcome of that was so positive, but it was really my back against the wall that kind of drove that idea and that creative thinking. And I think that's an important thing to remember when you're right at rock bottom, is that there is a way out of this, and often it does create something special. And in a similar way, I had another moment with in that business. So when Boots finally did take the order about 6 months later, I had a phone call from my supplier, who all of a sudden said that he couldn't make the stock for me. So after, again, another like 2 years of working for Boots, it was in the balance, that particular contract. And I remember really putting it on the line with him and saying, you know, this is my livelihood here, and there must be a way that we can get around this, and managed to convince him to really work hard at getting me a solution. And actually it was related to that moment that I needed some cash as well, really to kind of help me get out of that hole. And I was declined for a loan by a local organisation, who I won't name. And it was at that point that I thought, right, well, I have to put all my options on the table. One of them is to completely just walk away. And the other one is to look for an exit. And luckily the second option came to me, and we found an opportunity. So, and I'm really pleased that I was able to exit that business at that point. Looking back, it was the right time, and it gave me that nice platform then to go on and develop a business using all the learnings that I'd gathered from that first venture. So yeah, I think mine always come in pairs, really. I think it's always that kind of creative thinking as an output of a terrible situation.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see that the good comes from those really tough moments where, as you said, your back's against the wall. Just to close the discussion, I wanted to maybe ask you both to speak a little bit to the people who might be dialing in, who are considering pivoting their career and starting up a business. We've heard already in the chat from some female entrepreneurs who are already going through and resonating with the challenges you've described, but maybe just share your final thoughts to anyone who's thinking of joining a business. What would you recommend they think about as they're making that really big potential life-changing decision? Sarah, over to you first. What would be your advice?
I think one thing that definitely, and it's something that I hear again and again, and I'm kind of involved in a female mentorship program with Inset Squared as well, is just that women seem to lack confidence in themselves. I think that's a reoccurring theme that I hear again and again, and I think that, you know, Kate and I might come across quite confident about our businesses now, but no one goes into it, you know, 100% confident they can do everything and 100% confident that it's going to be success. So starting a business is a risk, but it's why shouldn't you do it? Why aren't you as good as the next person is doing it? So my what I always say to people is really believe in yourself. You know, other people haven't got superpowers, you know, they're the same, we're all human. So but you do have to have resilience, because you will be knocked back. but just take it one piece at a time. Don't try and do everything at once, and then you can get through it.
Fantastic. Kate, your last words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think so. When I started my first venture, a good friend of mine bought me a book called Do Disrupt by Mark Shaler. And there's one single exercise in there that I always remember, and I stand by it today. And it asks you 3 questions. What are you good at? What do you love doing? And what are you passionate about? And I think the key is that whatever you do, it has to tick each and every one of those boxes in order for you to kind of continue on that track and be resilient, as Sarah mentioned, really. Amazing.
Thank you both for sharing your stories. You are both an inspiration, but you shared your stories with such authenticity and honesty. I have no doubt you will have inspired many people listening in today to take the leap and start their own businesses. So thank you so much for joining us at Wales Tech Week.
Thanks, Priya.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for watching. Rewatch all of our sessions online. Thank you to our partners,